Before we begin tonight's slow journey into the quiet, veiled world of the 18th century courtesans, I invite you to let your breath settle just a little. Inhale gently as if you're drawing in the warm glow of a distant candle, and exhale softly, allowing the noise of the day to fade like footsteps disappearing down a dim corridor. As you sink into stillness, allow my voice to guide you, gently and without hurry, toward a world that once shimmered behind silk curtains, hidden staircases, and whispered secrets. Tonight's story is not told loudly, nor with the rush of deadlines and clocks. It unfolds slowly, like the unfurling of a letter sealed centuries ago, a letter written by hands long gone, yet carrying truths that drift quietly through time. And before we open that letter together, before we step into candlelit salons and forgotten palaces, I want to thank you for being here, sharing this moment of calm. If you find comfort in these soft journeys into the past, if these quiet voices of history help you rest, then gently, without breaking the stillness you've created, you may tap the like button or subscribe so you can return to this safe corner of the night whenever you wish, but only if it feels right, and only if doing so doesn't disturb your peace. Because tonight, we walk into a world most people think they understand, but almost no one truly does. The courtesans of 18th century Europe have long been painted in bold strokes, romanticized, dramatized, exaggerated. They have appeared as temptresses, power brokers, manipulators, or tragic figures, depending on who tells the story. But under those thick layers of myth lies a subtler, softer truth, one shaped by survival, intelligence, loneliness, charm, artistry, and almost unimaginable adaptability. These were women who navigated courts and kingdoms with quiet brilliance, women who learned to read people as if reading scripture, who understood politics without ever entering parliaments, who shaped decisions without signing a single decree. But tonight you will meet them not as caricatures, not as scandalous figures whispered about in old books, but as human beings with depth, dreams, and a kind of hidden power that history rarely acknowledges properly. To enter their world, imagine first the sound of distant carriage wheels rolling over cobblestone streets, echoing through a sleeping city. Imagine warm candlelight flickering against polished wood, velvet drapes, and walls adorned with pastel frescoes that watch silently as secrets unfold. Imagine a faint scent of jasmine, powdered wigs, polished brass, and old paper. Imagine the rustle of silk gowns as shadows move behind partially opened doors. Now imagine this entire world holding its breath, because this is where the courtesan lived, between the seen and the unseen, the spoken and unspoken, the permitted and forbidden. She moved like a soft breeze through chambers where politics brewed like bitter tea. She learned the delicate art of being both present and invisible, powerful yet powerless, celebrated yet judged. And though history often records the names of kings, generals, and ministers, it rarely tells of the courtesan who whispered a suggestion that changed a treaty, or the one who calmed a furious nobleman before he made a catastrophic choice, or the one who comforted a lonely prince who felt more trapped by his crown than supported by it. Their influence was gentle, indirect, and sometimes accidental, yet real enough to bend the fates of men who shaped Europe itself. But you don't need to strain your mind with heavy ideas tonight. This is not a lecture. This is a lullaby woven from truth. So let me take you deeper, not with urgency, but with the slow, steady rhythm of a story told by candlelight. Imagine for a moment that you are walking beside me through an old European city, Paris perhaps, or Venice, or Vienna, under a silver-blue night sky. The year is somewhere around 1760. The streets are quiet, save for the soft echo of your footsteps and the distant murmur of a river flowing lazily under arched bridges. Lanterns glow from windows high above, casting golden rectangles across the cold stone walls. Ahead of us stands a tall townhouse, elegant but discreet, its facade illuminated by only 2 lanterns instead of the usual 4, a sign that whoever lives here is influential, but wishes not to flaunt it. The air smells faintly of rosewater and wine. Music floats through the door, soft, delicate notes from a harpsichord, drifting like feathers. This is where our story truly begins. Behind this door sits a woman whose name history will half remember and half erase. A woman who knows the moods of ministers, the secrets of dukes, the desires of artists, and the loneliness of kings. She knows which alliances are cracking and which are secretly forming. She knows when a war is closer than anyone dares to admit. And she knows, perhaps better than anyone, how fragile the powerful truly are. But tonight she is not scheming, not charming, not performing. Tonight she sits quietly by a window, watching the candlelight dance on the glass, unaware that centuries later, someone far away, someone like you, will gently listen to her story in the quiet of their room, searching for rest, comfort, or an escape from the noise of their own world. And so, as you breathe slowly, as your thoughts grow softer, as the hum of the day fades, we step closer to her life, her world, and her silent strength. This is the hidden power of the courtesans, not the myths, not the scandals, but the human truth beneath them. Let us sit with her for a moment, not as intruders, not as judges, but as gentle observers. The room around her is warm, filled with the soft glow of beeswax candles. Their flames shimmer like tiny stars caught indoors, and each flicker paints slow, golden waves across the walls. A clock ticks quietly in one corner, steady, patient, unhurried, its rhythm blending with the soft breathing of the night. Nothing here moves with haste. Even time itself feels drowsy, reluctant to disturb the tranquility of the hour. Her name, though whispered in royal circles and written in coded letters, does not matter yet. What matters is the atmosphere that surrounds her, the stillness inside her chest, and the silent storm of thoughts she hides behind a calm expression. For in this moment, as she gazes out the window at the moonlit street below, she is neither powerful nor powerless. She is simply human, tired, thoughtful, and longing for something warmer than candlelight. Her gown drapes softly across her shoulders, pale silver with threads that shimmer like dew on morning leaves. Her hair is styled with elegant precision, adorned with pearls that quietly catch the light. But you can see, if you look closely, that she has loosened one ribbon at the nape of her neck, allowing herself a small breath of comfort. Even courtesans, praised for their beauty and poise, needed moments to unlace their perfection. It is in these quiet, unguarded moments that the truth of her life reveals itself. She is a keeper of secrets, a silent vault of confessions, fears, ambitions, and desires that powerful men would never dare share with their rivals. She listens with patience. She smiles with grace. She speaks with a softness that makes even the most hardened aristocrat feel understood. But she also watches, and she remembers, not for manipulation, but for survival. Because in 18th century Europe, Knowledge was a currency more precious than gold, and she possessed it in abundance. Yet the world outside these velvet curtains would never fully comprehend her. To some, she was a scandal. To others, a muse. To a few, she was a companion in the long, lonely nights of political pressure and hidden sorrow. But to herself, only to herself, she was something else entirely. She was a woman searching for moments of peace in a world that rarely granted it. And in this quiet moment, under this dim glow, she finds a sliver of that peace. As we stand beside her, watching the streets outside grow quieter, we begin to sense why the courtesans of this era held a power that was invisible yet undeniable. It was not the power of armies or titles, but the power of presence, the power of being the one person in a man's life who listened without demanding, who understood without judging, who comforted without expecting. This hidden emotional power shaped alliances, soothed conflicts, softened feuds, and, at times, changed decisions that would ripple across nations. But she did not think of these things now. She thought only of the night sky. Beyond the glass, the moon hangs low, soft and pale, like a pearl left on a velvet cloth. Clouds drift lazily across its face, and the wind carries the distant laughter of late-night revelers making their way home. The city, full of secrets, ambitions, and history, breathes slowly and gently, as if trying not to disturb her thoughts. She sighs quietly, the kind of sigh a person releases only when they are finally alone. If you listen closely, you can hear it, not with your ears, but with the stillness inside you. It is a sigh made of many things: relief, exhaustion, reflection, and a longing she cannot fully name. It is a sound that belongs to someone who has lived many lives within one lifetime, lives built from velvet and vulnerability, from laughter and loneliness, from admiration and misunderstanding, lives shaped by the hands of kings and by the echoes of emptiness. She closes her eyes for a moment, and in that moment something extraordinary happens. The world around her dissolves into softness. The harpsichord music fades, the street noises hush, the candlelight becomes a warm blur. It is as if time pauses, granting her a rare gift, a breath of peace untouched by expectation. In this brief silence, let yourself breathe with her, gentle, slow, unforced. Let the rhythm of the night settle into your chest, easing the remnants of your own day, softening the edges of your thoughts. You and she are separated by centuries, yet somehow connected in this shared stillness, a bridge between times built from quiet and breath. Now imagine the creak of a wooden floorboard, gentle, hesitant. Someone approaches her room, their footsteps slow, respectful. Perhaps a servant, perhaps a trusted friend, perhaps someone seeking advice, comfort, or clarity. But she does not turn right away. She remains still, allowing the moment to stretch like warm honey, savoring the final seconds of solitude before she must once again step into her role. The confidant, the muse, the listener, the delicate thread in the fabric of political whispers. She knows the world will soon ask something of her. It always does. But for now, she breathes, and so do you. Let the calm linger in your mind like the fading warmth of a candle just blown out. Let the softness settle in your limbs. Let the rhythm of the story lull the thoughts that chase you toward sleep. Because tonight you are walking with her, seeing the world through her quiet strength, feeling the weight she carries beneath her gentle grace. And slowly, step by step, truth by truth, we are beginning to uncover the hidden power of the courtesans. Power not born from dominance or control, but from understanding the fragile hearts of those who shaped empires. This night is only beginning. There is much more to discover. The footsteps outside her chamber pause, as if the visitor is unsure whether to enter or allow her solitude to continue. The house is quiet now, wrapped in the kind of silence that feels sacred, like a chapel at midnight or a library just before dawn. She opens her eyes slowly, letting the world return piece by piece, as though she is rising gently from a deep pool of thought. The golden glow of the candles softens the features of her face. There is grace in her expression, yes, but also a quiet weariness that no amount of silk or perfume can fully conceal. It is the kind of tiredness carried by those who have spent years performing roles that the world demands, while silently longing for spaces where they can simply exist. She lifts her hand and smooths the fabric of her gown, then glances toward the door with a calm patience, neither hurried nor hesitant. She knows someone will enter soon. She knows the night is not finished with her, but she also knows how to meet every moment with the same poised serenity that has kept her safe through storms both political and personal. The door opens gently. A young attendant steps inside, her footsteps soft enough not to disturb the air. She carries a silver tray with a pot of warm herbal tea, steam rising in delicate curls. Lavender, chamomile, and a hint of honey, blended not for pleasure, but for comfort. The courtesan offers her a small nod, a silent gesture of gratitude, and the attendant places the tray beside her before retreating with the same quiet grace. The door closes again. The room breathes. Steam swirls upward from the teacup like a spirit rising from an ancient vessel. The delicate scent settles around her, soothing something fragile inside her chest. She wraps her fingers around the warm porcelain, feeling its gentle heat seep into her skin. For a moment, she closes her eyes again, inhaling deeply, as though each breath is a tiny escape from the layers of expectation she wears every day. If you listen carefully, you can almost hear her heartbeat, slow, steady, thoughtful, like a soft drum keeping time with the peaceful rhythm of the night. In this small act, this sip of tea, this moment alone, we find one of the quiet truths of her world. Even those who appear powerful in candlelit salons often carry their strength in silence, not spectacle. Her influence is not loud. It is not shouted across banquet halls or written in proclamations. It is woven softly through the fabric of conversations, decisions, and emotions. Threads unseen, yet strong enough to guide the choices of men who carry empires on their shoulders. For in the 18th century, where power was currency and affection could be theater, the courtesan's greatest skill was understanding the human heart. Not the heart as poets describe it, but the heart as rulers attempted to hide it, insecure, frightened, ambitious, lonely, impulsive. She learned early that a whisper could shift a minister's mood, that a gentle perspective could coax a prince from anger into caution, that a well-timed question could plant seeds of diplomacy. And though she rarely received credit, her presence shaped outcomes more subtly and more deeply than most historians ever record. But tonight she is not thinking of politics. Tonight she is thinking of the river she visited earlier, the way moonlight flickered across its surface like melted silver. She remembers the quiet brush of the breeze against her skin, the distant laughter of lovers strolling along the banks, the soft creak of ships resting at their moorings. She remembers how the night felt open, wide, and comforting in a way that palaces never truly could. She imagines that river now, flowing beyond the city walls, carrying stories and secrets with gentle indifference. She imagines dipping her hand into its cool water, letting it wash away the weight she carries. She imagines what it would feel like to stop performing just for one night and simply exist as another anonymous soul wandering beneath the moon. The thought lingers, soft and wistful. Outside, a gust of wind brushes against the window pane, rattling it gently. The candle flames sway, their shadows dancing across her face in waves of gold and amber. She watches them for a long moment, mesmerized by the way light can bend and break without ever disappearing. There is a lesson in that, a lesson she has lived without ever naming. Light does not resist the dark. It softens it. It settles into it. It becomes part of it, not by fighting, but by simply existing. She has learned to be like that light, never imposing, never demanding, just present, soft but steady, quiet but undeniable. A knock at the door interrupts the stillness. 3 soft taps, familiar, respectful. She exhales slowly and sets her teacup aside. She rises with the grace of someone practiced in moving silently, her gown flowing around her like liquid moonlight. She glides toward the door and rests her hand on the polished brass handle. For a heartbeat, she closes her eyes, gathering herself, composing her expression, slipping back into the gentle armor she must wear. Then she opens the door. A man stands outside, well-dressed, anxious, his powdered wig slightly askew as if he rushed here in haste. His eyes, filled with unspoken worries, meet hers. But she greets him with the calm of a still lake, offering a reassuring smile that seems to soften the furrows of his troubled brow. He bows slightly, grateful not just for her presence, but for the peace she brings into rooms weighed down by the heaviness of political tension. "My dear," he begins, in a voice trembling with secrets he cannot share with anyone else, I did not know where else to go." She steps aside gently, allowing him to enter, guiding him with soft gestures toward the warm light of the candlelit room. As he speaks, haltingly, nervously, she listens, not with judgment, not with impatience, but with the same quiet strength that has become her true influence. And as the candles burn slowly, quietly, the weight he carries begins to lift, not because she speaks powerful words, but because she offers the rarest gift in the world of royalty and politics, a presence without expectation. This, more than any legend or scandal, is the hidden power of the courtesans. Not seduction, not manipulation, but presence, understanding, calm in a world built on storms. And as the night deepens, as the city sleeps, and as their quiet conversation continues, you begin to feel the softness of this world settling deeper into your own mind. A slow, comforting heaviness, a steady quiet, a gentle invitation toward rest. Tonight, you are not racing through history. You are drifting through it, breathing with it, falling into its soft, golden shadows. And this is only the first step of our journey. The man who entered her chamber that night carried with him more than worry. He carried the weight of a world quietly shifting beneath the polished floors of Europe's grand halls. And as I guide you deeper into this century, let your mind drift slowly, gently, like a leaf floating on a quiet river. For the Europe of the 18th century was not a single place. It was a tapestry woven from contradictions, ambition, elegance, and unrest. Close your eyes for a moment, if you wish. Imagine stepping into that era, not through the noise of history books, but through the soft, textured layers of sound scent, and feeling. Picture a world lit not by electricity, but by thousands of candles glowing gold in chandeliers, sconces, and lanterns. A world where the streets at night were dim and mysterious, where shadows folded over cobblestones like blankets. A world where silence was deeper, where distant horse hooves echoed like sleepy heartbeats, and where conversations carried a different weight, because every word, every glance, every pause mattered. This was a century on the edge of transformation. Monarchies still stood tall, but their foundations were beginning to tremble. Philosophers whispered about equality and rights. Scientists were unraveling mysteries once attributed to magic. Artists were painting with new freedoms, musicians composing with emotional depth that stirred hearts in ways never heard before. And beneath all this, beneath the extravagant gowns, powdered wigs, ornate carriages, and glittering salons, lay currents of change so subtle that only the most observant could sense them. Courtesans, living at the border between privilege and vulnerability, sensed these currents more sharply than most, because while society adored its illusions of grandeur, courtesans lived in the spaces where masks slipped, where kings confessed that they feared their own counsels, where nobles revealed their insecurities, where poets mourned unnoticed heartbreaks, and ministers whispered fears of rebellion. They saw the truth behind the curtains. They saw the loneliness beneath the power, the doubts inside the ambition, the cracks forming in the great European palace of order. And so, to understand the power they quietly held, you must first feel the world they lived in, not the world of fairy tales or lavish fantasies, but the real, breathing Europe that existed behind jeweled doors. Imagine now the streets of Paris around the year 1755. The air is filled with the scent of fresh bread from morning bakeries, mingling with the earthy smell of damp stone after a night of light rain. Merchants shout softly to early customers, their breath visible in the cold dawn air. A carriage rattles past, its wheels splashing through shallow puddles. Farther off, church bells ring in gentle waves, rolling across the rooftops. As the sun rises, its first light touches the windows of the Louvre, not yet a museum, but a palace of kings. The Seine glimmers softly under the pastel sky, and across the city, salons begin preparing for the evening gatherings, where philosophers, aristocrats, artists, and courtesans will mingle in an intoxicating dance of ideas, charm, and influence. Now imagine Vienna. The air is crisp, tinged with the smell of wood smoke curling from chimneys. Horses' hooves clack rhythmically on frozen streets. The great Habsburg Palace gleams under a pale winter sun, its halls echoing with distant music. Mozart himself perhaps practicing in a nearby room, his notes light as falling snow. Inside warm drawing rooms, nobles warm their hands by tall stoves decorated with painted tiles. And in one of those rooms, quiet, elegant, filled with the scent of beeswax polish, a courtesan sits beside a nervous diplomat, softly encouraging him to reconsider a message he plans to send, one that might offend a neighboring kingdom. With a gentle tilt of her voice, she nudges him toward a wiser path, a path that may ease tensions that could have escalated into conflict. No one will record her name in the treaty, but her influence will ripple through it. Now imagine London. Fog drifts like a pale ghost through narrow streets, muffling sound, softening the outlines of buildings. Lanterns glow like islands in a sea of silver mist. The Thames rolls onward, carrying secrets with each dark wave. Inside private clubs along St. James's Street, politicians debate loudly, glasses clinking. But inside the quieter, dimly lit private rooms, a courtesan sits with a member of parliament whose voice trembles when he speaks of the pressures he faces. She listens, not because she seeks advantage, but because listening is what she has learned to master. And through her listening, she discovers truths that connect her, silently, to the ebb and flow of national decisions. But the courtesan whose chamber we stand in now, our guide into this world, is not in London, Paris, or Vienna alone. She exists as an embodiment of them all. She represents the quiet influence woven through the entire social tapestry of Europe. To understand her fully, we must understand the world that shaped her and the world she shaped in return. The man sitting before her tonight speaks of political tensions, alliances shifting, whispers of unrest among nobles, concerns about foreign envoys. His voice wavers like a candle flame caught in a draught, uncertain, uneasy. And as he speaks, she listens with the same soft patience you feel settling in your own chest. She does not rush him. She does not judge him. She simply allows him to empty the heavy thoughts he carries, thoughts he cannot share with his rivals, friends, or even his family. And this, more than any romantic legend, is where her influence is born, in the quiet, in the listening, in the understanding that power is not only in decisions, but in the emotions that precede them. Let the atmosphere sink into you, the calm of the room, the warmth of the candles, the slow, steady cadence of their conversation. Let your breath fall into the same gentle rhythm. For as the night deepens and the world outside grows still, we are beginning to see not only the courtesan herself, but the vast, delicate ecosystem in which she exists. A world where every whispered word matters, where every alliance is fragile, where influence is soft as silk, but strong as silk too, and where women like her navigated the edges of society with an intelligence sharpened by necessity and a grace softened by compassion. This too is part of their hidden power. And so, as the lanterns flickered and the perfume of warm amber drifted lazily through the salons, the courtesan learned to shape the rhythm of conversation like a musician shapes breath. She discovered that the greatest key to influence was not in dazzling speeches, but in listening, truly listening, until a man began to reveal the quiet faults in his armor. In the calm glow of candlelight, soldiers confessed their fears. Politicians whispered their grudges. Merchants admitted the gambles they hoped to hide from the city. And in those hushed admissions, she found a map, an invisible chart of Europe's soft underbelly. This was the secret no history book dared to write plainly. In an age ruled by men, many decisions were softened, redirected, or completely reshaped in the presence of women who officially had no power, yet in truth navigated the currents beneath the surface. A courtesan could not raise an army, but she could soften the fury of a general. She could not sit in parliament, but she could nudge a statesman to vote differently after a single night of vulnerable confession. She could not command a treasury, yet she could encourage a nobleman to fund a project he had almost abandoned. Their influence wasn't loud or public or recorded. It was quiet, like moonlight guiding the tide. Over time, our courtesan realized something else, a truth far deeper than politics and far gentler than strategy. She learned that men who strutted across Europe wearing heavy medals and polished confidence often carried hearts made of fragile glass, and in that fragility they found a strange refuge beside her, because she did not judge them for trembling. She did not mock their uncertainties. She simply allowed them to unburden themselves, like someone resting their head on a soft pillow after a long day. And in a world filled with rivalry, war, and expectations, a woman who offered peace became far more powerful than she appeared. Yet even as she walked this strange balance between influence and invisibility, she knew she was dancing on a thin line. One shift of fortune, one fading trend, one jealous rival, and everything she had built could collapse like a paper fan left out in the rain. For power gained in silence must also be defended in silence. And so she learned to move the way candlelight moves across a wall, softly, subtly, never drawing more attention than she intended. But behind her gentle smile, she kept her secrets like pearls, threaded tightly on a string. She watched, listened, remembered. And the elite of Europe continued to underestimate her, which of course was her greatest advantage. As winter settled quietly over the city, the salons grew warmer, softer, and more secretive. Snow muffled the cobblestones outside, but inside, among velvet curtains and slow-burning candles, conversations deepened like midnight water. The courtesan found that winter was always the season of revelation. There was something about cold nights and heavy cloaks that made people long for comfort, and something about the glow of her room that made even the most guarded soul unclench, little by little. Men who had once spoken boldly of treaties and trade routes now confessed softer, more fragile truths. The fear of failure that kept them awake at night, the loneliness hidden beneath their wealth, the guilt of decisions made in haste. And as they spoke, their voices grew slower, gentler, like a lullaby no one intended to sing. This was when she listened most closely, not for gossip, but for patterns, connections, the subtle lines that linked one powerful man to another. She began to understand that influence was not a throne or a title. It was a thread, delicate but unbreakable, weaving quietly through circles of privilege. She discovered how one whispered confession from a nobleman could reveal the weakness of a rival, or how a merchant's hesitation could hint at a shift in the city's future. And slowly, without anyone noticing, she began to pull those threads together, creating a tapestry only she could see. Yet she carried this power with the softness of moonlight. She never forced a truth, never pushed a secret, never demanded loyalty. Instead, she allowed relationships to form naturally, like ivy growing along a quiet wall, steady, inevitable, and unnoticed by those passing by. Her apartment became something more than a salon. It became a sanctuary. Politicians arrived not to boast, but to breathe. Generals came not to impress, but to rest. And the courtesan, calm, observant, with her voice soft as dusk, became the keeper of worries the world was not ready to hear. But even as she offered comfort, she remained mindful. Power offered in vulnerability was a gift, but it was also a responsibility. So she treated every confession with the delicacy of handling old parchment. She understood that the moment she misused one truth, all others would crumble away. And secretly, she wondered if this fragile balance was her true purpose, not the jewels she wore, not the admiration she received, but the quiet transformation she inspired in the hearts of those who visited her. She could not change the map of Europe with her hands, but with her presence she could soften the minds of the men who did. Still, beneath the gentle surface, she felt something shifting, a new season approaching, a new set of challenges rising like distant thunder. Power, even when held softly, always attracted shadows, and she knew the world outside her candlelit sanctuary would not stay peaceful for long. But for now, she simply exhaled, letting the warmth of the room settle around her like a blanket, and allowed the night to unfold in its quiet, unhurried rhythm. As the nights grew longer, she began to notice how the smallest details often carried the heaviest weight. A hesitation in a nobleman's voice, a faint tremble in a general's hands, a distracted sigh from a politician who usually guarded his emotions like a fortress. These tiny shifts, invisible to the world outside, spoke louder than any official decree, and she, in her quiet attentiveness, recorded each one in the silent library of her mind. With time, this subtle awareness became her compass. She could sense when a treaty was on the verge of collapse, long before diplomats admitted it. She sensed the rising tension between two rival families simply by how their messengers avoided meeting each other's eyes. And she sensed the tremor in Europe's political climate, an undercurrent of uncertainty echoing through every man who visited her. Yet none of them realized how clearly she saw through the masks they wore. Still, she treated each revelation with gentleness, never using her insight to harm or manipulate. Instead, she offered guidance in the softest form, questions phrased like suggestions, reflections disguised as casual thoughts, and often it was these small, delicate nudges that encouraged a man to reconsider a decision that might have led to conflict, or to soften a stance that might have caused unnecessary harm. Her wisdom was not shouted. It was woven into conversation like threads of gold hidden within silk. But her nights were not only filled with secrets, they were also filled with stories. Men spoke of landscapes far beyond the city, frozen northern frontiers, warm Mediterranean harbors, quiet villages tucked between misty hills. Their words painted pictures in her mind, flickering scenes illuminated by the soft glow of candles. Sometimes she wondered if she would ever see those distant places herself, or if her fate was to remain here, in rooms where time seemed to move slower, like a river drifting half asleep. Yet she never felt trapped. Instead, she felt anchored, steady in a world that changed its rules every season. Her sanctuary was both a haven and a listening chamber, and she had learned to cherish the balance it offered. Still, she sensed a quiet truth lingering beneath the surface. Every season of influence is temporary. The aristocrats who relied on her today might rise or fall tomorrow. The political world she navigated so gently could shift in an instant, like a sudden gust extinguishing a candle, and she understood that her own position, woven so delicately between admiration and invisibility, could never be taken for granted. But for now the city remained hushed, the salons softly glowed, the snow outside continued to fall like powdered moonlight. And in this calm, fragile moment, she allowed herself to simply exist, to breathe, to observe, to drift in the quiet rhythm of winter. For power, she realized, is not always about shaping the world. Sometimes it is about understanding it so deeply that the world begins, slowly and unconsciously, to shape itself around you. As winter began to loosen its grip, the city changed in ways so subtle they were almost imperceptible. Icicles thinned along rooftops, market bells regained their livelier echo, and the faintest hint of spring drifted in through the narrow streets. But inside her quiet sanctuary, the courtesan felt another kind of thaw taking place, one not marked by weather, but by the shifting moods of the men who visited her. Their conversations no longer trembled with cold season worries. Now they carried the restless energy of approaching change. Some spoke of new alliances forming across the continent. Others whispered about rumors, small at first, like ripples in a still pond, hinting at political storms gathering far beyond the city walls. She listened with her usual calm, gently brushing her fingers along the stem of a crystal glass, or adjusting a candle's flame as the room filled with their quiet unrest. It fascinated her how easily power changed direction. One month the city seemed stable, predictable, familiar. The next, it felt as though everyone was waiting for something unseen to reveal itself. And she noticed how even the most confident men adorned with medals, titles, and the illusion of control, entered her salon with a hint of uncertainty in their eyes, as if seeking reassurance in a world shifting beneath their feet. She became their anchor, not by offering answers, but by offering space, a place where they could speak without fear, a place where their doubts were safe, a place where they could lay down the heavy armor they wore in daylight. And slowly they did. One night, a high-ranking diplomat confessed that he feared Europe was entering an era where elegance and reason might be overpowered by ambition and unrest. Another night, a young heir, barely more than a boy, admitted he felt crushed beneath the expectations placed upon him since birth. And an aging general, known for his iron will, quietly wondered whether peace could ever last long enough for him to retire in comfort. Their voices grew softer as they spoke, settling into the warm air like feathers falling gently to the floor. The courtesan listened to each one, her expression serene, her presence grounding. She realized that these confessions, though not recorded in any book or official document, were the true pulse of the age. They revealed more about Europe's future than any public speech or royal decree, and she cherished the quiet responsibility of holding these truths, protecting them not for her gain, but because she understood their fragility. Yet beneath the calm surface of her existence, she sensed the beginning of a new chapter. Power, especially the kind that moves in whispers, never stays still for long. And as spring approached, bringing with it fresh ambitions, new rivalries, and shifting alliances, she knew that her role in this delicate dance might change as well. But she did not fear what lay ahead. Her life had taught her to move with grace through every season of uncertainty. For now she allowed the moment to linger, the soft glow of her salon, the muted hum of distant streets, the comforting warmth of early spring breathing against the windows. In this gentle pause between two worlds, she exhaled slowly and let herself drift in the quiet rhythm of the night. Because influence, she realized, is not a crown one wears. It is a presence one carries. And hers continued to fill the room like a soft, steady light. As winter began to loosen its grip, the city changed in ways so subtle they were almost imperceptible. Icicles thinned along rooftops, market bells regained their livelier echo, and the faintest hint of spring drifted in through the narrow streets. But inside her quiet sanctuary, the courtesan felt another kind of thaw taking place, one not marked by weather, but by the shifting moods of the men who visited her. Their conversations no longer trembled with cold season worries. Now they carried the restless energy of approaching change. Some spoke of new alliances forming across the continent. Others whispered about rumors, small at first, like ripples in a still pond, hinting at political storms gathering far beyond the city walls. She listened with her usual calm, gently brushing her fingers along the stem of a crystal glass, or adjusting a candle's flame as the room filled with their quiet unrest. It fascinated her how easily power changed direction. One month, the city seemed stable, predictable, familiar. The next, it felt as though everyone was waiting for something unseen to reveal itself. And she noticed how even the most confident men adorned with medals, titles, and the illusion of control, entered her salon with a hint of uncertainty in their eyes, as if seeking reassurance in a world shifting beneath their feet. She became their anchor, not by offering answers, but by offering space, a place where they could speak without fear, a place where their doubts were safe, a place where they could lay down the heavy armor they wore in daylight. And slowly they did. One night, a high-ranking diplomat confessed that he feared Europe was entering an era where elegance and reason might be overpowered by ambition and unrest. Another night, a young heir, barely more than a boy, admitted he felt crushed beneath the expectations placed upon him since birth. And an aging general, known for his iron will, quietly wondered whether peace could ever last long enough for him to retire in comfort. Their voices grew softer as they spoke, settling into the warm air like feathers falling gently to the floor. The courtesan listened to each one, her expression serene, her presence grounding. She realized that these confessions, though not recorded in any book or official document, were the true pulse of the age. They revealed more about Europe's future than any public speech or royal decree. And she cherished the quiet responsibility of holding these truths, protecting them not for her gain, but because she understood their fragility. Yet beneath the calm surface of her existence, she sensed the beginning of a new chapter. Power, especially the kind that moves in whispers, never stays still for long. And as spring approached, bringing with it fresh ambitions, new rivalries, and shifting alliances, she knew that her role in this delicate dance might change as well. But she did not fear what lay ahead. Her life had taught her to move with grace through every season of uncertainty. For now she allowed the moment to linger, the soft glow of her salon, the muted hum of distant streets, the comforting warmth of early spring breathing against the windows. In this gentle pause between two worlds, she exhaled slowly and let herself drift in the quiet rhythm of the night. Because influence, she realized, is not a crown one wears. It is a presence one carries. And hers continued to fill the room like a soft, steady light. As the days stretched longer and the evenings softened into shades of pale gold, the courtesan began to notice how spring not only renewed the world outside, it also revealed hidden layers within people themselves. The men who came to her salon seemed lighter in their steps, yet heavier in their thoughts, as though the warming air encouraged their minds to wander into territories they had avoided all winter. And she welcomed these wandering thoughts with the same calm grace she offered every season. Her salon, bathed in the muted glow of sunset, became a place where time gently dissolved. The delicate fragrance of early blossoms drifted in through the open balcony doors, mixing with the quiet crackle of a candle's steady flame. In this serene space, the world's noise softened, leaving only the quiet murmur of intimate conversation. One evening, a prominent statesman arrived unexpectedly. His shoulders carried the poise of authority, yet his eyes carried the exhaustion of someone who had spent months pretending to be stronger than he felt. As he sat across from her, he spoke not of politics, treaties, or the diplomatic pressures that shadowed him daily. Instead, he confessed something far simpler, his fear that he no longer understood the world he helped shape. The courtesan listened quietly, her expression serene, her presence steady. She understood that confession was not an admission of weakness, but a rare moment of honesty, a moment he would never allow himself in the public eye. And as he spoke, she could sense the shift within him, like a tightly wound knot slowly loosening with every word he released into the calm air of her room. Another night, a wealthy merchant told her of his longing to return to simpler days, before wealth transformed every relationship into a negotiation. He spoke of his childhood village, the sound of river water against stones, the peace he once felt watching lanterns float gently across a night sky during festivals. His voice grew soft, almost wistful, and she listened with genuine tenderness, offering him the rare chance to remember who he had been before ambition reshaped him. And then there was the young aristocrat, confident in posture, trembling in truth, who admitted that he feared he was not meant for the life his family carved out for him. His confession was not dramatic nor urgent, it was simply human, and she treated it with the quiet respect it deserved. These men, each powerful in their own way, came seeking answers the courtesan knew they already carried within themselves. She merely offered a mirror, gentle, clear, and patient, reflecting their truths back to them without judgment. In this sanctuary, they found the freedom to breathe, and it was in these moments, when candles burned low and the outside world faded into a distant hum, that she realized the true nature of her influence. It was not rooted in seduction or charm or secrets. It was rooted in something far rarer. She made powerful men feel human again, and in doing so, she softened their decisions, their tempers, their ambitions, if only slightly, but enough to shift the balance of the world in small invisible ways. Yet even as she offered this refuge, she remained aware of the delicate balance she walked. She knew too well that influence held in silence must be protected with silence. Not a single confession was ever repeated. Not a single vulnerability was ever exploited. Her reputation for discretion became her shield, more protective than any political alliance could ever be. But beneath her calm, she sensed a slow, steady change approaching. Not a storm, but a turning of the tide. Europe was restless, whispers were growing, and she knew her sanctuary, though peaceful now, existed at the edge of a shifting era. Still, she did not worry. She simply breathed, allowing the soft rhythm of spring to wrap gently around her, like a silk ribbon carried by the wind. For influence, she had learned, is not measured by how loudly one speaks, but by how deeply one is heard. And so, as the last candles of the evening flickered gently toward their final glow, the courtesan sat in the quiet stillness of her sanctuary and allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. Outside, the world continued its delicate dance of ambition, politics, rivalry, and change. But here, in these softly lit rooms, time moved with a slower heartbeat. She knew she could not stop the shifting tides of Europe. She could not rewrite the future, nor control the storms that gathered beyond her sight. But she understood something even more powerful, that in every age it is often the softest presence that leaves the deepest imprint. Her influence was never carved into monuments, recorded in ledgers, or spoken in royal courts. It lived instead in the quiet hearts of the men who visited her, in the softened decisions they made, in the moments of peace they carried back with them into a restless world. Perhaps history would never speak her name. Perhaps her role would remain hidden in the shadows of grand events. But in truth, she had shaped far more than anyone knew, for she had reminded powerful men of their humanity, and in doing so, she had reminded them of wisdom. As the night settled into a gentle hush, she closed her eyes and breathed deeply, letting the soft air of spring drift across her skin. The world outside would continue its endless turning. The salons would fill again. The whispers would rise and fall like distant waves. But for now, in this quiet moment, she allowed herself to simply be, still, peaceful, and unhurried. And as you drift into sleep, let this gentle truth settle around you. Sometimes the most extraordinary power is found not in what we change, but in the calm we bring to a world that so often forgets to breathe. Good night, and may your dreams be soft, peaceful, and beautifully quiet.